Mike here. I figured since I'm on a roll doing some videos, regarding the past a bit, going way back, I had done a video on wrestling, and in that video, I'd indicated that, yeah, I was an average wrestler with some very memorable matches. I discussed one of those matches in that video. It's clear I have to have a playlist set up. I'm going to do that for the martial art vids and the two wrestling ones. This is going to be my last one on the wrestling. This is my favorite, I guess you could say, very most memorable match um, that I had wrestled in the 3 years. Um, Back in those days, there weren't cameras, videos like they are today, where everybody's got a handheld. It's just like we're talking the 70s here. Okay, there were only two matches that were videoed. Um, it was a big deal, of course. You'd have the teacher from the audio visual department show up at the match, and they'd have the whole setup and everything. I mean, today you could have 10 parents with their little tripods, with their little, right? But back then, it was a big to-do. So there were only two matches that were videoed. One I got to see, it was against Guilford, and I think this one was in 1976. And the only thing, I can't remember who won it. It was obviously a very minor decision. It wasn't by much, whoever did. And the only thing I can remember from that match, when I watched it at home, because it was really cool because they actually put it up on cable. The only thing I can remember is the announcer making a comment about the immovable arm. And I guess I had gone for a takedown double leg. He did a sprawl. He was attempting to spin around to get the 2-point takedown. And I guess my arm was up, and he just couldn't get past it. So the announcer was just, the only thing I remember was obviously he was trying to do the takedown for the two by getting around, but he was facing the immovable arm. He called it the immovable arm. It's the only thing I can remember. Now, the other match was recorded. There was a Mr. Miller from the audio-visual department that showed up that night actually. It was special as well because typically our matches were in the new gym. It was a little smaller, a little lower, more stuff in it. There wasn't as much sound, and it was in more of an isolated spot from the school, so you wouldn't get other students showing up there just out of curiosity. So this night it was different. It was January 1977. I was wrestling the 155 weight class, and Valley Regional came to town, and this one was likewise videoed and recorded. And because it was in the larger gym, it was noisier. Plus, they brought a few people, not a whole lot, but a few. Valley Regional brought a few. So you had a few people there. And there was more people on our side because being in the heart of the school, the old gym, there were kids that had activities or whatever. Well, they were sitting. Now, we had more people sitting in there, okay, because they were curious. They were watching the match. So we had that going. This match was a very, very tough match. By the time the 145 weight class, they were wrestling, and I was on deck, and I was, behind the team. There was some mats set up for warm up. The other guy was behind his team, and it was a very, very tough, very, very close match, and the coach came walking up to me, and he just had this look on his face, and he says, I figured this out. I said, you have to take it to this guy. You have to beat him by a major decision or pin him, or I figured it out. We're not going to be able to win this match. Because he knew the weight classes after me were really, really tough. It didn't look good for the heavyweight, and it was just going to be tough on the next three guys, and it was the outcome was looking like we were going to lose by a little as a team. I just nodded my head. I looked across and um, just looked at the guy back across. I nodded my head, and when it was match time, and I had to go out there, and there was a few people that were typically not in the watching a match that it showed up because they had after school activity, whatever it was, and they were there, and they were some old buddies of mine um, that I knew from the days we used to hook up and play football or baseball after school up at Horner's Field. So there were a couple of those guys there. They lived in a different neighborhood just north of us, but we got to know the kids congregating, like sixth, seventh grade in that area. So he has a big mouth, this guy. All right. So of course he starts chanting while banging the bleachers, bang, bang, go, go, Minio. And of course, other people start. So I go out there, the match, and I go within 15 seconds. I do a double leg takedown and dominated the first period. Second period began with me on top, and when the ref blew the whistle, he went for the escape hardcore. All I can remember, okay, when I say all I can remember, I remember a lot, actually, was how tightly my face was pressed up against his back as I was holding him. I still had my arm around his waist and the crook of his arm, and he was really going for it. He was really trying to make the escape, and I was really having my face smushed up against his back hardcore. I just gave him just broke his gravity with a simultaneous like this, okay, on his hip and his arm, and took him down to the mat because he was like halfway up, and I was so tight, my face up against his back, and we both went down to the mat, bam, and that, of course, that force got transferred to my face, okay, it was pressed up against his back, but when we hit that mat, he went, oh, literally, he literally had the air just knocked right out of him between my hitting the mat, my weight on top of him, and my face pressed right in the middle of his back. Went, boom! And the first thing that came to my mind was bloody nose. And then I had to end the match quick. I mean, just that was the bloody nose thing. Because I was worried about that bloody nose upon that impact. Because bloody nose meant loss of momentum. It meant starting the match, stopping the match, starting the match, waiting 3 minutes, okay, starting the match, stopping the match, waiting 2 more. I mean, you talk about a momentum killer. So it went really quick. Hit the mat, oh, the wind knocked out of him, my face smushed up against his back. I thought, nosebleed, I got to end this quick. Went right to the half Nelson and pinned them 15 seconds, about 15 seconds in, 10, 15 seconds in. And what happened was the whole team jumped off the bench. And they came running out onto the mat and they picked me up. Of course, people were banging the bleachers, following the cheerleader, who I won't say his name. I'll do him a favor. I won't mention his name. Okay. That was a momentum builder and changer, believe me. So now the next three guys up, they were psyched out. They were psyched up, I should say. And they were so pumped. The whole team was pumped. And I mean, to have them all run out on the mat, pick me up, and be totally like, whew. And then the next three guys went out and finished the match. And you know what? We won. Now that was something, I mean, that is worth I mean, a gold medal, that is, I mean, when you as a person are put in that position, and I think everybody should have that happen at least once in their life, the big play, the big stop, the big score, right? But in wrestling, individual, team, it was really rare to have it come down to a match in the mid there at 155. Like, this is going to make the match or break the match. The team knew it. The coach knew it. They knew that it was riding on my match. As an individual showing up for the team. So I'll tell you, that was that experience alone. That's like, just a incredible experience to have. And then to be able to watch it the next day on video. Now, back in those days, most people still had tape and projectors. I mean, really, it was high tech, the audiovisual department, right? So, only 2 matches were recorded. Guilford, Valley Regional. Two different coaches, I believe. But I can assure you, if I was the coach, he coached only 1 year, I'd have a copy of that thing. I really would, because that was the 1 year I coached and the one match that was actually recorded. And they won, too. So that's one I would want if I was a coach. I tried to find it online, but I can't. What else? Was there anything else I want to talk about regarding this thing here? Anything else? Yeah, I think a little bit. Yeah, that my senior year, the coach, as a matter of fact, the Valley Regional match there. But that senior year, those coaches, they were new basically to wrestling. They had some wrestling in college, whatever, but they were football coaches, assistant. Okay, they were brutal. Oh my God, they were brutal because our football team. I'm not exaggerating. I think they won the state at least 3 out of 4 years. I mean, I don't think they lost more than 2 or 3 games in 4 freaking years. Okay, I mean, and it had to do with the coach, and it had to do with the fact they were better conditioned, better disciplined, the whole thing. You could see it in the game. You could see it the first half would be close, even if the team outweighed them. I mean, there was one team. It was like when you added up the players on the rosters and everything, it was like a 40-pound average difference per man on the field. But this team was so disciplined that in the third quarter, coming out of the huddle, executing plays, the discipline and the condition. So these guys were assistant coaches. So they brought that mentality to wrestling, and they really killed us. They really did every practice. I mean, 3 hours of you wouldn't believe, right? But I'll never forget the first day of practice. And of course, you always have people that are going to try out, right? They're going, I'm going to try wrestling, right? I'll never forget. Well, anyways, the practice was so freaking brutal, right? This one kid, he was waiting for his chance to run. So as soon as that coach turned his back, he made a beeline for the freaking locker, right? And he runs up to the locker room. And he's like, and he looks. I'll never forget it. The horror on his face is when he couldn't realize he couldn't get out of the gym. Needless to say, I can even tell you his name. I'll tell you. I'll never forget it. I can see his face. I know his name. What an experience. But anyways, it was brutal. Those practices they overdid it, I think. I mean, no water for 3 hours. Brutal freak. I mean, you'd go into the locker room after a practice. You'd go like this, and all the skin would come off your lips. I mean, literally, the whole layer would just peel off from dehydration. they overdid it, I think, on the condition. Just really, uh, but anyways, more technique, I think. A little more technique, a little less being killed every day in practice. But I have to say, I was in incredible condition. But I think overtrained. So, anyways, yeah, you live and learn. That was their first year. The year after that, I think they got two brothers that had both had wrestled college hardcore, and they had a team that was state champs that following year. Coaching is so huge, obviously. And if you've had people that have been there, done that in a major way, you're going to bring a whole lot more to the table. And two brothers that both wrestled, brothers, I think they were called the Navarro brothers, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Loved wrestling. It was hard as hell, is all I'm going to tell you. The practices are what were so brutal. You know, doing that is incredible conditioning, to say the least. Well, that's my story. A little bit on how brutal the practices were. My favorite match, I mean, really, the one that was just the hands down. My God, if I could get a copy of that match. In the old days, it'd be like, okay, sure, I'll just burn a whole bunch of CDs and giving them all to their, whatever's. Where you'd be downloading them from wherever. You'd be up on YouTube. You'd be you know what I'm saying. It's a whole different world back in the 70s. You're lucky if you get a few pictures. I mean, if nobody is at your match with a camera specifically interested in you, you might not have had any pictures at all. So, if you get a few pictures, you're lucky. If you get a video, you're really lucky, going back to the 70s. We've come a long way in that regard. Information, it's like incredible. That's enough. I'm going to call it quits. First attempt at recording this. This is right off the cuff. Just letting it out here. Part of getting to know people. You know what I mean?